On the world map, Cambodia is just a small patch of land squeezed between Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Its population is a bit over 17 million. Its economy is still developing, with a GDP per capita near the bottom of Asia. If you only look at size and money, you would never expect this country to hold any sort of global military record. Yet for many years, Cambodia has attracted attention for one strange fact: the number of generals in its armed forces is said to be comparable to, or even higher than, those of military giants like the United States or Russia when adjusted by scale. Journalists, analysts, and even ordinary Cambodians have asked the same question again and again. How can a small, relatively poor country have so many top-ranked officers? Why does a military with modest size need such a huge pyramid of generals at the top? To understand that, you have to go back to the violent history of Cambodia, to the collapse of the Khmer Rouge regime, to the chaos of multiple armed factions, and to the way Prime Minister Hun Sen built a political system where ranks and stars on the shoulder are not just a matter of defense, but also a currency of loyalty and power. At the end of the 1970s, Cambodia was a country in ruins. The Khmer Rouge regime had carried out policies that killed around 2 million people through executions, starvation, and forced labor. Many of those who died were exactly the people a modern state badly needs: teachers, doctors, engineers, officers, administrators. When that regime fell, the new leaders faced a nearly impossible task: build a functioning government and a national army on top of the ashes of a destroyed society. At the same time, the battlefield was not quiet. Different armed groups existed, at once remnants of the Khmer Rouge, forces supported by neighboring countries, royalist militias loyal to Prince Sihanouk, and the newly formed army of the government that would later be dominated by Hun Sen's party. Each group had its own commanders, its own internal hierarchy, its own heroes of war. In such a situation, promoting officers was not just a technical decision, it became a political tool. Granting a rank, especially the rank of general, was a way to convince a commander and his men to join the new structure, to stay loyal, to accept the authority of Phnom Penh instead of continuing to fight on their own. As Hun Sen gradually consolidated power, this logic became even clearer. He needed to keep different ex-commanders satisfied: former Khmer Rouge who defected, royalist officers, regional warlords, longtime party loyalists. Many of them had troops behind them and connections in the provinces. Instead of trying to crush every single group, it was often easier and safer to absorb them. Give the commander a position in the army or the police. Give him a rank that sounds impressive. Let him keep some influence over his region, but tie his future to the central government. In that world, a general's star on the shoulder was not only a symbol of battlefield merit, it was a sweetener, a guarantee. It said, "We recognize you. You are part of the system. Your interests are linked to ours." Over time, this way of doing things spread beyond the immediate post-war needs. In many professional militaries, becoming a general is the result of a long and narrow path: years of command experience, tough training, constant evaluation, few available slots, strict age and performance rules. In Cambodia, that path is often much looser. The rank of general can function like a reward for political loyalty, for contributions to the ruling party, or even for economic support. Business people close to power, civilian officials in ministries, police chiefs, members of the Prime Minister's extended network may receive military ranks, sometimes honorary, sometimes with real positions attached. For them, a general's rank is not mainly about leading troops in war. It is about status, access, and influence. In a system where personal networks matter enormously, a uniform with stars opens many doors. That is why some analysts say military ranks in Cambodia work like a special currency. The central power can pay people not only with money and business opportunities, but also with titles.
Agreed.
When politics gets tense, when elections approach, when alliances need to be strengthened, the leadership has something to hand out that does not cost cash immediately, but means a lot socially. A new general is born, sometimes several at once. Multiply that practice over many years, and the total number of generals grows far beyond what the size of the armed forces would suggest. Observers inside and outside Cambodia have tried to estimate the number. Exact figures are hard to get, but former opposition politicians and independent researchers have spoken of numbers in the thousands. Some have claimed there are 3,000 or more generals spread across the army, police, gendarmerie, and other security branches. For comparison, the United States, with more than 1 million active duty troops and global commitments, has under 1,000 generals and admirals. Russia, with a long tradition as a military power and a far larger arsenal, also has fewer high-ranking officers than the rough estimates for Cambodia. The contrast is striking. A small military establishment that, at least on paper, has a sky full of stars. Inside Cambodia, this sometimes produces absurd situations. Units which, by their size and mission, would normally be commanded by a colonel, may have 1 or 2 or even more generals formally assigned over them. Departments with narrow responsibilities can still be headed by officers bearing impressive titles. Some generals are very active and involved in real command and control. Others occupy more symbolic or administrative posts. For ordinary soldiers, this can create confusion about who really holds authority and who simply holds a rank. For the public, it becomes a joke and a source of cynicism. People talk about generals everywhere, while basic living conditions for many remain difficult. From the point of view of power, however, there are advantages in this inflation of titles. In a system where the army and security forces are deeply tied to the ruling party, the top leadership always worries about loyalty. A small number of powerful commanders, each controlling huge forces and resources, might be a political risk. They could gain the ability to act independently or even challenge the civilian leadership. By contrast, a larger number of generals, each responsible for narrower sectors and dependent on the center for their rank and privileges, are easier to manage. Their authority overlaps. They compete for attention and promotions, and they know that their status exists thanks to the goodwill of the people above them, not independent power. That fragmentation of authority functions like insurance against coups or disobedience. In this logic, loyalty matters more than competence. It is better, from the viewpoint of a top leader, to have a loyal but average general than a brilliant but unpredictable one. Promotions then naturally favor those who show political reliability, who participate in ruling party structures, who support the government during elections and crises. When the most important criteria are trust and obedience, the military becomes less of a professional institution and more of an extended arm of the regime. The uniform and the rank hold a political meaning first, a technical meaning second. There is also an economic dimension. In many developing countries, and Cambodia is no exception, senior officers and security officials often have deep connections with the business world. They may own shares in companies, partner with investors, or hold formal or informal authority over land concessions, construction projects, casinos, logging or mining operations. A general's rank helps in all those areas. It signals to partners and rivals that this person has protection at high levels, that deals made with him or her are backed by power. It may bring access to information, to licenses, to security services. For a business person, aligning with such a figure is a way to shield investments and gain advantage. For the general, business ties become another source of income, beyond official salary. This is one reason why many people actively seek promotion to general, not because they dream of leading divisions in war, but because they know the rank can be leveraged into economic clout. As this pattern repeats, the military gradually turns into what some analysts call an economic ecosystem. Different branches and units have links to different economic sectors. Some guard key borders and customs points. Others have influence over labor, over transportation, over urban development. The line between public security and private benefit blurs. In such an environment, reducing the number of generals or restructuring the hierarchy is not just an internal military reform. It is a direct hit on the interests of powerful networks. That makes reform extremely difficult. Of course, this system has costs. The first is financial. Generals receive higher salaries than lower ranks, plus housing, drivers, bodyguards, healthcare, and pension benefits. The more generals there are, the more the defense and security budget must cover fixed costs rather than training, equipment, or support for ordinary soldiers. In a country where public funds are limited and many villages still lack basic infrastructure, investing heavily in the perks of thousands of senior officers is a controversial choice. Some citizens quietly ask whether the money could be better used for schools, hospitals, and roads. The second cost is institutional. When promotions are based largely on political loyalty or personal ties, talented younger officers can feel blocked. They may see that no matter how hard they train or how well they perform, the decisive factor for reaching high rank is access to the right networks. That discourages professionalism and encourages the search for patrons instead. Over time, the Army risks losing its best people to frustration or corruption. The public image of the military also suffers when people see generals whose lifestyle is far removed from the struggles of ordinary soldiers and citizens. If you compare this to the United States, you see very different incentive structures. The U.S. military operates under strict rank ceilings set by law. Congress controls how many general and flag officers each branch can have. Promotion boards examine an officer's record, education, command experience, and performance. The number of positions at each general rank is limited. When one general retires, another can be promoted. But the total does not balloon freely. Russia, with its own political characteristics, nonetheless has a long military tradition where ranks are tied to specific positions and formations. Its army is not immune to politics, but it operates on a scale and with a doctrine shaped by large wars, not by the need to absorb many small factions into a patronage network. Cambodia's case is different because its number of generals has grown primarily according to the needs of internal politics rather than according to the requirements of modern warfare. The country does not face large external wars, nor does it deploy major expeditionary forces abroad. Most of its security challenges are domestic border issues, internal order, and the management of protest and opposition. That reality makes the huge number of generals more puzzling if you look only through the lens of pure military necessity. It becomes clearer when you see ranks as part of the architecture of power. Who benefits from keeping the system the way it is? Obviously, the generals themselves, who enjoy prestige, connections, and material benefits. Business partners who rely on their protection also gain. And the top leadership benefits, because it has a tool to reward supporters and maintain loyalty throughout the security apparatus. Who pays the price? Ordinary taxpayers who fund the system. Ambitious officers who might prefer a professional career path instead of a patronage game. And more broadly, the idea of a neutral, national military that stands above politics. Could Cambodia simply decide one day to drastically reduce the number of generals? In theory, yes. In practice, it would be extremely sensitive. Every general is connected to networks of relatives, subordinates, business partners, and local elites. Removing the rank, especially without offering something in return, would cause resentment. Too many angry, highly connected people inside the army and police could destabilize the very order the government tries to protect. That risk is one major reason why, despite criticism and jokes, the system of many generals has proven durable. Changing it would require not just technical reform of the armed forces, but a broader shift in how political and economic power is organized. All of this leads to a final question. Does having so many generals make Cambodia more secure or more powerful? Most military experts would say no. Real strength does not come from the number of stars on shoulders, but from training, discipline, logistics, modern equipment, effective doctrine, and morale. A small army with a lean, competent leadership can be much more capable than a larger force whose command structure is bloated and politicized. In Cambodia's case, the unusual number of generals is less a sign of military might and more a symptom of how closely security forces are tied to politics and business. For many Cambodians, the story of a tiny country with more generals than military superpowers is not particularly funny. It is a reminder of unresolved problems in governance and development. For observers around the world, Cambodia offers a vivid example of what happens when military institutions are used as tools of patronage. Ranks that should represent responsibility, sacrifice, and expertise risk, turning into ornaments that can be bought, sold, or traded for loyalty. Behind the bright stars on the uniforms lies a deeper question about the kind of state the country wants to be and whether its armed forces will one day be reformed to serve first and foremost the interests of the nation rather than the needs of a narrow circle of power.